It was our family story of a child being lost and reclaimed.
Mm,
Reclaimed. The lived experience of many children and young people who have gone through all that was feeling lost and never being
mm,
reclaimed. It took hard work sometimes to remember what might be going on when children are doing things that seem
mm.
crazy. One of the abilities that the Mulberry Bush has developed and maintained over the years is bringing child and families back together. And
Mm,
on those occasions where it can't be the natural family, it is a supportive integration with a substitute family that has meaning and that doesn't disavow
yeah.
the birth parent, doesn't disavow it. But it is a judgment that we're seeking, not to be judgmental,
Mm,
a judgment. And the judgment needs to be made, but it won't help if it's judgmental. They're
mm,
no good. They're not good enough. It's about what brings us to this point and how can we manage a transition to, if you would, a safer haven
mm.
without the denigration. And I think actually community living can incorporate not family but familial dimensions
Yeah.
to it. And
Mm.
and they work.
Hello, and welcome to the Secure Start podcast and the second installment of my conversation with much loved Mulberry Bush elder Richard Rollinson. Before we get into the conversation, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands I come to you from, the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and acknowledge the continuing connection the living Kaurna people feel to land, waters, culture, and community. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I do hope you'll enjoy watching and listening to this conversation as much as I did having it.
Okay. This is a trio. Super Ted. This is a settee. I don't know where the soft bit has gone to it, but I'll start here with police officer Morris Leibowitz, who, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
who was the traffic patrolman
Mm-hmm.
in our city back in New York, who went to school with my dad and knew him. And
Mm-hmm.
Moish, his name was. It's the Americanization of the Yiddish Moshe, but
Mm,
and we called him Mush instead. And one day when I was at most three, we went to a picnic with a group that my father and Moish were there. You know, we're there together, and I wandered off,
mm,
and I was wandering. And now the important thing is, I remember this very, very clearly.
mm.
Moish turns up on his beautiful, beautiful motorcycle, and he says, "With a face like that, you can only belong to one person. Climb up here." And he put me on the front of his motorcycle and sort of
Mm.
pedaled me across to my dad and said, "Jackie, I think this one's yours." And, they thanked him. Then they would tell me, "Oh, you got yourself lost. You got yourself lost." Even at that age, I was thinking, I didn't get lost. You lost me.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember the story is not because I have a clear memory of it actually happening. It was our family story of a child being lost and reclaimed.
Mm.
Reclaimed. And it was told, quite, not every week or every six,
Often
8 months,
enough.
something would come up.
Mm,
And I can remember it because the family memory was of being lost
mm,
and being reclaimed. And that's quite important because I think, again, the link to our work, as I'll say with these things, is the lived experience of many children and young people who have gone through all that was feeling lost and never being
mm.
reclaimed.
Mm.
So, Super Ted. This was, uh, we often would find an object for Mulberry Bush children that had a significance to them. And there were these Super Ted stories before there were cartoons, and I would read them to Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And he really, really liked them. And I saw this Super Ted somewhere, and I got it for him,
Mm-hmm.
early in the 1980s. And he had it all his time, and he left. He came back to visit quite some years later, and he brought this. He said, "Richard, I want you to have it. You gave this to me, and I want you to have it now." And what he did after I gave it to him was I had to spend a lot of time finding it because
Mm.
Luke would lose it. Super Ted was lost.
Mm.
And, sometimes it was easy to find it. There was one occasion where I looked everywhere, up and down, inside, outside, late into the night, because I had to give it to him at bedtime. And I
Mm.
said, "Look, Luke, I just can't find it. I'm really sorry. And I know you always have it." I said, "Look, the only thing I'm going to do is here, take my watch, have it in bed with you overnight, and then I'll come at around 6 o'clock in the morning
Mm.
and we'll go downstairs tiptoe and look for it," which is what we did. And he gave me my watch back and we went looking around, and I was just about to give up.
Mm.
But I think he rather steered me in a direction. I suddenly thought, above this cupboard, we have a space where we put the suitcases for the children, in between times of going home and stuff. I said, "Oh, I think I'll just look up here." And I sort of, in those days, I could sort of jump up and pull myself up. And I
Mm-hmm.
went off, and right at the very back was Super Ted. You Luke's looking, "How did it get there?" Oh,
Mm.
but so, so I brought it back to him. But there was this thing about something important being lost
Mm.
and having to be found and reclaimed, reaffirmed belonging.
Mm.
And actually, I think that was the last time he ever threw it away.
Mm.
But it was my job. He didn't get rid of it,
No.
it was lost. And I
Mm.
had to find it, reclaim it for him, and reunite it with him.
Mm.
And it's just so significant. And then a number of years later, sorry, this is the object. It's a
Mm-hmm.
settee,
Mm-hmm.
and Sherry was someone who would hide herself. And one of the grown-ups, Marguerite, always had to go look for her.
Mm.
And she would hide herself. She was really good at it, round the site, inside, outside somewhere. And she was a child who wouldn't run off. She was much too frightened. But within the safe space of the bush environment, she hid herself. And, Margaret would find her. But on this one occasion, she came to me at around 10 in the morning, and she said, "Richard, I have been looking for since, Sherry, since 8:30 this morning, and I can't find her." And in those days, if a child was missing from care for an hour, you had to
Mm.
report it to the police. Don't worry, I took care of that. But anyway, I said, "Well, God, she can't be." And we're standing in one of the common rooms of the houses, and we're talking about it. And she says, "I just don't know where to look for her. I've tried everywhere, everywhere, everywhere." Suddenly, erupting up from a settee, which wasn't wooden, comes Sherry. "You fucking bastard! You didn't fuck you!" And she was furious that
Mm.
Marguerite couldn't find her. And you know what she'd done? She must have taken days and days. It was one of those foam settees. She hollowed out The whole bottom of it.
Mm,
I don't know what she did with the bits, so she could hide under it with the cushions on top of her. I mean,
mm,
it took a real lot of work. No wonder Margaret couldn't find her. And but she was furious that Marguerite hadn't been able to find her. She should have known that she'd do that. We said, "What did you do?" Look, she calmed her, and they were reconciled after about
mm,
5 minutes. But it was this intense fury of
mm.
not being reclaimed
Yeah,
when lost,
yeah.
because it wasn't the child, it wasn't her fault she was lost. It was a fault,
Mm,
it was the responsibility of the adult, and then the fault of the adult if they weren't
mm,
found and reclaimed. So you have these very powerful, powerful dynamics going
mm,
on, where at the base of it is not feeling found,
mm,
reclaimed, owned, if you would, in that healthy sense of the word. And, you know, it, it took hard work sometimes to remember what might be going on when children are doing things that seem
mm,
crazy.
mm.
Yeah. So,
Belonging is very much
yes,
a part of the conversation, isn't it?
yes.
More and more so, I think. Again, I'm aware of some people who talk a lot about the role of belonging, and some of my guests have spoken about, including in a residential care environment, therapeutic residential care environment, talk about the importance of belonging to a
Mm,
a service, if you like, not in the in the sense of these are my people. This is where I belong
mm,
for
mm,
this time and for in this part of my life, and but also, of course, they belong to their birth families, and I think belonging is the belonging to birth families, the need to honor that,
mm.
honor the importance of
Yeah,
of a of
yes,
of supporting and where appropriate promoting and that enduring sense of
yes,
belonging to birth
yes.
families, because
Mm,
one of the tragedies of social care is the children who transition from care at 18
mm.
and without a sense of
Have
belonging to
nothing.
anyone.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Mm,
I mean, a couple of things come to my mind. I remember David one time, uh, you know, given what had happened and, just mother with mental health problems, doing a couple of dangerous things in their presence, not to them, but in their presence. And they were
mm,
removed into state care. And he was quite lost. He said, "My mother doesn't love me."
mm,
I said, "Is that how you feel, David?" "Yeah, she doesn't love me." I said, "Okay, hang on now. Let me suggest to you that actually your mother loves you
mm,
very much. The problem is because of her own difficulties, as you know, she can't show that love just now in reliable care for you and your younger brother
mm,
and sister. But she fully supported that you were taken into care and you're here at the Mulberry Bush too. But, you know, I think it wouldn't be fair to your mother, and I don't think it'd be fair to you if you really thought your mother didn't love you, because
mm,
I think she loved you enough to make sure you would be well looked after at a
mm,
time where she couldn't look after you. And that's what happened. And, it wasn't one of those
mm,
occasions where he dropped down on his knees and says, "Oh, that's so insightful, Richard." But it was something about, we were talking about putting a container around something that could perhaps make some sense of it
mm.
rather than to feel bereft and lost and chucked
Because
away.
the language that is often used around children in used around and with children in
Mm,
out of home care is that their parents um, didn't love them. In fact, that they hurt them,
yeah,
that they neglected them, that they did bad things. They weren't their parents were lacking in some ways. They were deficient, um, which the children find difficult to make
mm,
sense of, and ultimately land on there was something inadequate about me that meant
yes,
that
yes,
my parents weren't better for me.
mm,
Um, that my parents didn't try harder, I guess, for me, and that reflects something deficient about me. And I think that's a beautiful way of thinking about it, and it's very much is aligned with the conversations I often have with
mm,
children that even if the parents are not supportive of the child coming into care, as is often the case,
yes, yes,
they it is important. I think that's often important information
mm,
for children to have at some point,
mm,
that their
mm,
parents fought for them, fought
yes,
to have them,
yes, yes,
and also that their parents did love them.
mm,
I've met in, I mean, you've had a longer career than me, but my career spans 31 years, and um, I think my exposure to birth parents leads me to believe that they love their children in their own way
yes,
very much.
yes. I would say that in my long professional career, there are at most 3 or 4 occasions
Mm,
when I had very serious concern and acted on a
mm,
willful intent to harm
yeah,
child,
yeah.
but only 3 or 4 out of
Mm,
you know many hundreds, and
mm,
they were so clear. All the others, the neglect and things, there was love at source, but the inability for other
mm,
circumstances, personal and family and social, that prevented that from being reliably
mm,
delivered. And
mm,
and I think one of the abilities that the Mulberry Bush has developed and maintained over the years is bringing child and families back together. And
mm,
on those occasions where it can't be the natural family, it is a supportive integration with a substitute family that has meaning and that doesn't disavow
yeah,
the birth parent, doesn't disavow it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The way a way of thinking about it that's come to me as we're talking about this is that the issue is not so much that the parent doesn't love the child,
Mm.
it's that the parent perhaps doesn't love themselves enough.
That's certainly a feature in a number of
Mm,
them.
mm,
Yeah, and 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 perhaps is that way because they themselves
yeah.
didn't have the good enough start.
Mm,
Um, yeah, and I think there are certain decisions that professionals have to make based on the information, but it is a judgment that we're seeking, not to be judgmental,
mm,
a judgment, and the judgment needs to be made, but it won't help if it's judgmental. They're
mm,
no good. They're not good enough. Yeah, it's about what brings us to this point and how can we manage a transition to, if you would, a safer haven
mm,
without the denigration
yeah,
of
yeah.
others in service to it, because it won't work.
Mm,
And for the
mm,
reasons you began with about the longing of the child for the natural family.
mm.
Not that some of them might ever be able to live there, but they can still be supported to recognize
Mm,
that it's there. And it often helps them settle down in the location where they have been placed.
mm. It- this conversation has reminded me of a conversation I had on the podcast with Richard Rose earlier this year.
All right.
And one
Oh,
of the
okay.
things that I like about Richard Rose's therapeutic life story work approach is that it incorporates the parent's story
Mm,
into the child's story, the child's narrative, or the narrative that the
mm,
child that is developed with the child with through
mm,
the process. That so it's not just you're in care because your parent did a bad thing or did bad
mm,
things.
mm,
Parents are afforded the opportunity to tell their
mm.
story and for that to
Yeah.
be integrated into
Mm.
the child's understanding, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there should be more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And children can understandably be cross and upset and angry about these things, but it's their feelings, and there's a space to put them into context. One
Mm,
can say, "Of course you're cross and you're angry. That's understandable, but let's broaden it out a bit
mm,
about what
mm,
that's done." Yeah. Not to make
mm.
not to make excuses, but really just to understand. Yeah.
Yes. And I think sometimes people struggle to get their head around
Mm.
that understanding is not permissiveness
Yeah.
or not permitting.
Yeah.
It is just understanding,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging.
Mm. 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 Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Gosh.
We need to move on to another object,
Oh,
Richard.
okay. Great. Okay. The first one. You know who that is, don't you?
Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is it that Superman is most fearful of?
Kryptonite.
Kryptonite. I have to keep it in this box because I have to protect him. And what is he
I
fearful about? What is he fearful about with kryptonite?
Oh, now you're testing me. It's weakness. It diminishes him, doesn't it? He loses his
Yes.
power.
Yeah. Some people think he dies, but of course he doesn't. He loses his superpowers,
Mm,
which leaves him being human.
mm,
He's no longer Superman. He's human, and he's frightened of being human
mm,
because being human is a huge challenge that makes us vulnerable. And I think, in a way, it's a great story. I love the Superman comics and all the things, but I think it's also helpful for us to remember about how hard and scary it is to be human.
mm,
Because being human means we are open to all the wonderful things and the slings and arrows of life and everything and relationships and the like. And I expect many of us will encounter occasions when it's going really hard where we wish we were supermen or women,
mm, mm.
but instead we're just the mensch, the man. And
Yeah.
we have to find another way of dealing with it rather than being the man of steel and
Mm.
getting out. And 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 I
The
think
Ubermensch. Mm,
yeah, sometimes people, again, under pressure, can try to steel themselves
mm,
against it. I don't know if I said the last time, you can edit it out if I did, but I remember James one time up at the Mulberry Bush in the front field, and Nicky called him in to have lunch, and he and he throws his arms in the air, and he says, "I hate human beings." And I was walking across the field, and I sort of did. I said, "Oh, actually, James, Nicky's just asking you to go in to have a nice lunch. She's not going to stick your head down the toilet bowl. It's not about that. But afterwards, can you come and find me? Because I've had a thought I want to share with you.
mm,
And he'd give you the look. Hmm? I said, no, just have lunch and come and find me. So off he went, and an hour or so later, after he'd had lunch and then played, he came to me and said, "Oh, Rich, what do you want? What do you want?" I said, when you were upset earlier and you screamed out, "I hate human beings," it did make me think that sometimes you hate being human
mm,
because you have a lot of feelings and some of them are really, really hard to have and to manage. And I think, but we are human beings, and you've had a really good lunch and a good playtime, and that's part of being human as well. So
mm,
let's just remember that it can be fun being human and it can be difficult at times. And here is a place where we can help you
mm,
when the things are difficult and allow you to have the good parts of being human. But being human, it's got a lot of good things about it.
mm.
And of course, he looks at me and said, "Yeah." And it's just one of those things where, the child takes it, but thinks, what the hell's he on about? But, it was some way of doing it. And I'm trying to think, where is that? There's an associated object. Oh, I know. This is this is associated to that. So we've had Superman. Now we have is it's in Britain they call him Father Christmas. I'm used to calling him Santa Claus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The
Yeah.
light's getting a bit dull there,
Oh,
Richard.
sorry.
That
There he
yeah,
is.
there he is.
There he
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And the the other thing about Santa is in my I have too much time to think sometimes. You turn the letters around and it's Satan. Santa, Satan. Yeah?
Yeah.
There you go.
Goodness gracious.
Exactly. You see? But see the thing is, Santa is perfectly good and
Mm,
Satan is perfectly awful. And this object of Santa reminds me of Ricky,
mm,
who when he came to the Mulberry Bush and he said to his mother, "So what what would you like us to be able to do with him and for him?" She says, "I just want him to be good."
mm,
And she couldn't break that down into things. So, just to be good. But in her view, he either had to be perfectly good
mm,
or he had to be perfectly awful. And that's a hard task for a child.
mm,
And so Ricky focused on being perfect. And he was either
mm,
perfectly good or perfectly awful with us and used to, which was his job, I suppose, to drive us. Because the rapid swings sometimes too. And
mm,
one time, uh, Christine was with him trying to, and I said, "Look, let me give you a break. You've had him since 7:30 this morning." I said, "Hey, Ricky, come with me. Where are we going? Where are we going?" I said, "We're just going to go for a walk." And I took him out into the children's gardens, which were, lovely if rather sad kind of things.
mm,
And I said, "Look, Ricky, this is what the people in England call a common garden.
mm,
It's not perfectly good. Look at all those weeds over here. And it's not perfectly awful. Because look, oh, there's
mm,
a nice butterfly, and look, and there in the pond is a newt we can see. Yeah, and
mm,
I said, really, it's a common garden. You don't have to be perfectly good or perfectly awful. Just be like the garden.
mm,
About 10 years or more afterwards,
mm,
after he left, he comes in, about 6'2" tall. So I'm rather glad I didn't pick on him or anything. And he had a lovely visit. He said, "Rich, do you remember that time you took me into the garden?" I said, "Yeah, I remember this." He said, "I have no idea what you were saying or what you meant. I just knew it was important. I've never forgotten it."
mm. Yes.
So again, my profundity didn't lodge in his mind and his heart, but it
Mm,
was having been encountered, caught in this terrible, terrible predicament, and somebody said, "Look, there's a way out." And he
mm,
seemed to be doing very well, and he and my Marion were fine. So it was just something you could say, "Look, all right, you don't really have to understand it, but there's a way of looking at it that can,
mm,
you know, take you out of this rapid swing of the
mm.
counsels of perfection."
Yes. 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 I'm in mind of, it puts me in mind of young people who strive for perfection in different ways. Um, Sporting, for example, they take up a
Yes.
sport and they want to be perfect in that sport. And let's say, for example, it's basketball. Everyone wants to be like the best player that in the NBA at a given time.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to be like Michael Jordan,
Yes.
or I want to be
Yeah.
like I'm picturing him, but I can't think of his name. Who has also been, for a long time accorded the status of being the best player in the NBA,
All
but
right. Yeah. Yeah.
he's
The tall
now
fella. Yeah.
yeah, the tall fella. That's right.
Oh, yeah. I
Anyway,
mean, the really tall fella. I know who you mean.
yes, yes. Oh, it'll come to me. But I have a similar conversation in a sense where we'll talk about you want to be
Mm,
like this person, this best player in the NBA, and when you like that, you'll have truly made it, and then we'll move the conversation to on to well, I guess that wherever we're in any pursuit, in any
mm,
activity,
mm.
there is always going to be someone who's the best at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all
Yeah.
those other players, all those, your Kevin Durant's and
Yeah.
this person and that, all the how, would you like to play basketball as well as any
Sure.
of them? And of course they would,
Yeah.
but they're not the best.
No.
There are plenty in the NBA is full
Mm,
of players who are not the best.
mm, mm, mm.
There's no
Because
need.
they
In
all can't be
fact,
the best.
that's right. There's no need to be the best.
Mm, yeah. Playing it for uh, love. Um, Mind you, it's rather nice to have a moment of glory.
Yes.
But so growing up in high school in New York City, the New York Knicks played.
Yeah.
And anyway, what they did was before the professional match, they'd have a high school match. And so we're there, high school. It was, Cathedral against Spelman, and we're down
Mm,
there. And, at that match, there's about maybe 200, 150, 200 people there, family and friends and things. But by the third quarter or into the fourth quarter, there's about 16,000 people there
mm,
because, well, they're gathering for the next game.
yes.
And they watch that game just like everybody else. Whoa, wow. So suddenly you have 14 to 16,000 people cheering things. And
Mm,
I was someone who I was like the enforcer. I played because I was the one who'd, take one for the team or something. And I was otherwise useless. But I have a photo because the Knicks photographer would
mm,
also take photos of the high school match as well.
Hmm.
And I've got this photo in my bedroom of me going in for a layup in Madison Square Garden. It looks perfect form. It must be one of only three layups I ever converted
I
in
was
my
going to
whole
say, did you
career.
miss or did
No, it went in that time, but it's one of the very few times, and it's that moment is captured on the
Yes.
Madison Square Garden court. And
Mm,
I think, yeah. I mean, I would have been nowhere near the NBA. I mean, in fact, in university, they wouldn't have even let me sweep out the changing rooms. So when I
mm,
came to England, I could play basketball.
yeah. Yeah.
And I used to book all of our matches with the U.S. Air Force bases because we'd
Mm,
go to them, we'd play, we'd be biting their kneecaps because they had 6'9", 6'11" guys. But the hospitality afterwards was great. Barbecues, Hershey chocolate bars, you know, Rheingold beer. That was kind of,
mm,
but
mm,
it's that kind of in my small way. I had that, but I always knew
yeah.
it was by default I was a basketball player.
Mm,
Yeah, but I know what you mean about just that moment.
yeah. S- Richard, um, I think we're going to have a fourth installment to get to perhaps to get along to some more
Exactly. Yes.
objects. I I before I let you go, and we'll
Mm,
wind up this episode, and this is something of a question without notice, but a colleague, he's known to you. He's very known to me. Patrick Tomlinson has
oh,
been
sure.
he has recently written about, and we've had a conversation about the trend in the UK, which is probably mirrored in jurisdictions around the Western world in
Mm,
particular,
hmm.
towards smaller scale
Yes.
residential homes, one and two children,
Yes.
one or two children, and versus
Yeah.
the therapeutic communities, which
Mm,
still exist, not in the same
mm,
number as existed in the UK
mm,
in the past, but
mm,
but Mulberry Bush is still around.
mm, mm,
Amberley Care.
mm.
There are some others around,
Yeah.
and Patrick is well, amongst other things, it's questioning this trajectory
Mm,
towards small,
mm, mm.
smaller and smaller children's homes, one or two
Yeah.
children, and that you lose something when you do
Yes.
that. You
Yeah.
lose the power of the group. I'm just interested because you were involved in a
Mm,
therapeutic community for
mm,
so long, you still
mm.
are, and what your thoughts are about this trend towards smaller and smaller homes, group homes, versus the old, well, I shouldn't call it the old, but versus a therapeutic
Yeah.
community with a larger number of children and young people.
Yes. Um, I'm sad that the default position, if you would, or the sought after position, is for the one or two child young person homes. It might work for some. I mean,
Mm,
there is an assessment and matching thing, but I think that it is a tremendous loss for a number,
mm,
the opportunity to live not just in a group, but as a group. And the
mm,
group really lives together and meets together and plays together and learns together. It's it's a shared experience that uh, it can be so helpful. And so many people who experience it give in the end just as much or even more than they've taken from it. It
mm,
is a lost opportunity. I think it's a function, as I'm sure Patrick will have identified, about the way our society has gone increasingly from the 70s. And look, there were a lot of large size institutions that were really just warehousing, but
mm,
that doesn't make every experience of large group, 10 plus living no good, and it doesn't
mm,
make every one child or two child environments a really good thing because it doesn't replicate family life for reasons we spoke about before, and I'm sure Patrick identified others. It we are human beings, we are social creatures, and we need to
mm,
find ways to recognize that and utilize it.
mm,
In it's like creating a micro society to help people learn to live with themselves and with other people in a range of ways, rather in very tiny set piece ways.
mm. It reminds me when I was growing up, we were close. I was the eldest grandchild on both sides of my family because my
Uh-huh.
parents were the eldest child on each side. Um,
Right,
I had more to do with the father's side of the family, my father's side of the family in terms of cousins, involvement with cousins
right,
and so on, but than on my mother's side of my family. But my
right.
grandparents were very involved with us growing up, very, very involved, and I spent
Mm,
most school holidays with my grandparents. But
wow.
also, we had a lot to do with our aunts and uncles, particularly on my dad's side, and cousins. So
Right.
this idea, and Patrick talks about well, Patrick and I had a conversation about this only very recently. This
Mm,
idea of a family being like two adults and two children, or
yeah.
something of that ilk, is is not representative, perhaps, of what we knew of
Mm,
as a family only a generation ago.
yeah.
You know, a
Yeah.
generation or two ago, where my family was the five people who lived under my roof, my grandparents who had
Mm,
separate houses, but we spend time living and eating
yeah.
and staying under theirs, and then the uncles and aunts and the cousins as well. So that my sense of family was not that five; it was a much
Mm,
larger group,
mm,
and there were dynamics in that family
yeah.
that contributed to my growth and development as a person.
Mm, mm, mm,
And I think when I listen to you talk about the mulberry bush, and we've touched on it even a little bit here in this conversation, how that when I was talking about that contagion, or that spread of influence,
mm,
that includes the children influencing the children.
mm,
And Patrick often has often reminded me that the idea of it takes a village to raise the children, as it was originally conceived of,
mm, yeah.
included other children.
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
And and it's giving them voice. I mean, just to affirm that and how they do it. Uh, every once in a while, in the community, you get a delegation of children, three, four, five, coming to the grown-ups and saying, "Why can't?" What one of the examples that came, the children were suddenly being told not to run
mm,
from the school area, to the houses, and they came and said, "Why can't we do that? It's not fair. We're not being dangerous. We're just running. Why do we suddenly have to?" And it's this kind, the creeping thing that you have to check. And they delegation saying this. I said, "Well, who's? Oh, well, so and so said." So okay, look, leave. Well, actually, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. They said, "Look, we'll look into it and
mm,
and get back to you." And of course, it was a well-intentioned, somewhat newer member of staff who I think was anxious about losing control
mm,
rather than just being present and in charge. And we had to say, okay, look, I think the children aren't causing any harm to themselves or others. They're exuberant about getting out, and they're not running away, they're running too. So
mm,
can we all agree it can happen? And I think it was a relief for that person too, that he
mm,
he didn't feel that he was going to be out of control of everything if they just let the children do it. So even on those small ways of living, groups, parts of groups, and I think actually community living can incorporate not family but familial dimensions.
Yeah.
to it, and
Mm.
and they work. They're not
Mm.
exactly the same, but the principles or the spirit that underlines them, families, can be elaborated and added on to within
Mm.
the community. Is this the way we want to live?
Mm.
You can, we've asked them when something goes bad or wrong, is this the way we want to live?
Mm.
Broken windows? Huh? And the group is saying, no, not really. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to read that by Patrick.
Yeah, he released a paper only a week or two ago
Okay.
of his thoughts around that. Um, just, I'll tell you one last little story. When I was in grade 6 and grade 7 at my primary school, I'm just
Right.
thinking about the running and the not
Yes.
running. At my primary school, they had a pile of old car tires.
Oh, right.
And my class, the classroom of boys at our breaks, recess and lunch, there was a bitumised area around the school before you got to the school
Yes.
buildings, before you got to the oval, and we set ourselves up a a track as such. It's not really a track because it was more like a drag strip.
Right.
And we would over and over and over for the entire period of these breaks, we would have races with
Mm.
these tires, pushing these tires the
Oh,
length of this
stretch.
bitumised area
Yeah.
stretch. Yeah, and you just think of we never had a teacher come out and say, what about the small reception kids who are sitting on the grass just at the end of that? Because none of us ever lost control of the
No.
tires.
Mm.
But yeah, you just think about it's one of my best memories of primary school. I used to
I
love doing
bet.
that.
I bet.
I
Yeah.
loved it, and but there was so much risk, but a lot
I
of
know. I
reward
know.
associated
Yeah.
with that. Yeah. Anyway, you got me think about it when you talked
There you
about
go.
running across the from building to building. But look, Richard, it was wonderful to speak to you
Oh,
again, and
thank you. I certainly enjoyed it and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
yeah, yeah, and maybe if there's more objects, we can do it again next time.
Oh, there's plenty more.
Another-
Good, good. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Richard.
Colby. All the best.
It's not loud, but it's survival.